these techniques come together to form a full encounter? And are there different points in the interview when certain techniques are more or less likely to be incorporated? The short answer is that some of the techniques, like open-ended questions and most types of reflections, are used throughout an MI session. Other components are employed at specific phases. For example, agenda setting should be used in the early stages, whereas action reflections are more likely to occur later in the encounter. As I mentioned earlier, a useful framework for understanding the flow of MI is the three-phase model that entails exploring, guiding, and choosing. Exploring is the main strategy in the early stages. Here, using open-ended questions, content, and feeling reflections, you draw out the basic plot line, the reasons for and against change. It's during this phase when you might set the agenda for what behavior to work on. Because the ultimate goal is to move people toward change, one must balance the principle that barriers are allowed, whereas benefits are encouraged. This often means that in the beginning, during the exploring phase, we simply accept what is said, comfort the afflicted. Whereas during later phases, we use more challenging reflections, which afflict the comfortable. This phase often ends with a summary reflection. During the guiding phase, you start to move the conversation more toward the possibility of change. Here is when you might employ the importance, confidence rulers, as well as values and strengths activities. During this phase, you also may provide some new information using the Elicit-Provide-Elicit model, or EPE. This is a patient-centered way to provide information and advice. It entails first eliciting what the parent knows or has heard about a particular topic. With permission, the clinician then provides the new information or advice in small doses. If the information is contradictory to what the parent knows or thinks, it may be helpful to introduce the information with, "What I'm going to tell you may sound different from what you've heard." The second E entails eliciting from the parent their interpretation or conclusion of what the clinician has said. In other words, asking, "What does this mean to you? What do you make of this?" During the guiding phase, this discussion will also begin to focus guiding on possible solutions to barriers, and an action plan may begin to emerge. A key strategy here is the use of action reflections. There's a good chance that your MI session will move back and forth between exploring and guiding. If a parent becomes resistant in the guiding phase, you may have to back off a bit and go back to exploring. As you may recall, MI resembles a dance more than a wrestling match. You'll react fluidly to where the patient leads, and you follow. The last phase, choosing, typically entails having the parent choose an action plan, ideally from a menu of possible strategies. The menu can include things the parent has mentioned or ideas you might want to add. If you add, parents may be more receptive if you ask their permission first. To add a strategy to the menu, you might say, "Would it be okay if I shared some options that have worked for other parents?" Once you have generated a menu of options, you can ask, "What if any of these might work for you?" If the parent chooses a direction, you can become more directive by asking them to develop a specific action plan and to delineate between short and long-term goals. This may begin with a probe such as, What do you think you can do in the next few days or weeks to get started with your plan? Or what might be a first step?